All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL DFS video. Going to be getting into my first look build here for DraftKings in week one. Let's go ahead and get into it. So I said that with a little bit of quotations there because I already did a first look video about 2 weeks ago now. For the most part, I still agree that this is a very solid base build that we can be on for week one. Now, there has been some more information that we have gotten that might make it a little bit easier for us. But at the same time, I still think this is a very solid base build. Anthony Richardson is someone that we can put out there as a solo piece because he has that rushing upside. And I think that's going to be a big thing for him. But John Robinson's kind of the stud that I could fit into this build, so I was happy to do that. Devin Singletary should be in for a good matchup going against the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings defense is going to be one of the worst in the league, I think, especially their secondary. But obviously with the Giants having Daniel Jones at the quarterback, I worry that he's just not going to be all that good again. And so maybe the way you attack a bad defense is just with Singletary, who I think, at least at the start of the season, is going to get a heavy workload. DJ Moore in a great matchup against Tennessee should have a high floor. Same thing with Terry McLaurin. Again, getting two receiver number ones at a very cheap price tag. That should be getting about 7+ targets each. That should be an easy 12 or so fantasy points for us. And then Cortland Sutton, very cheap price tag for another guy that should be safe as well. Now, the issue with some of those plays is we might be able to replace that production now with some news that we have, and we'll see if it holds up. Zach Ertz, I'm kind of fine with him. Joe Mixon, very solid play. Very solid floor build here. Like this should be able to cash. Obviously, that is always my goal when I give you guys any sort of content, is to have the most people be able to benefit from it as possible. But let's go ahead and do kind of the second look build. This is typically when I would come out with this video, maybe on Tuesday or Monday evening, really depending on when the salaries come out as well. But I wanted to give this one another go at it. So let's go ahead and start with the running backs. I have really kind of dialed in on Rico Dowdle as someone I want to be in. I mentioned this in the value plays video. I mentioned this a bunch in some of the other videos as well. His price tag is just simply too low for the expected workload that he's going to get. And that was even reaffirmed by some messaging from Mike McCarthy being put out there, basically saying, oh, he's a 3-down running back. Oh, we're not going to be playing him on special teams because he's too valuable for us. Which kind of echoes my thoughts throughout the season. I basically see the situation as the Dallas Cowboys 2 years ago, where you had Tony Pollard in a role who really popped off for some big plays. I think Rico Dowdle is going to be in that role. And then you still have Zeke and a little bit of Dalvin Cook in that Zeke role. We remember back then Zeke was terrible. Kind of expect him to be bad again. So might as well go with the person that might be the RB1. And I say might be the RB1 because, yes, reports are out there. I shouldn't even say reports. The depth chart is out there saying that Dowdle is listed as RB2. We'll see. We'll see if that holds up to be true. But even if he gets a 50-50 split or even a 40-60 split, this is still too cheap of a price tag. And that's really my goal, is to find the best value plays each week so that we can then afford to pay up for the studs. And so I want to do that. Sticking with the running backs, there's again, really only one running back that I'm pretty high on, especially probably compared to the field. That is going to be Devin Singletary. Again, I really like the projected production that he should be getting. He's the only player where at his price tag, I think he's going to be probably $500 more expensive. But that's the biggest takeaway from this week, everyone, is that the pricing is probably the best it's been for week one in quite some time. There isn't any crazy value spots, potentially, especially at the running back position, though, because the pricing is pretty good. At least this year thus far for the running backs. And so I'm okay with that. Now, if I can afford to pay up for a different running back, if I can swap them out, I'm okay with that. I do like Joe Mixon. I feel like he's going to be a high floor play for us this week. And I don't mind JT. I don't mind John Robinson. And then also James Cook, if you guys want to go there, you could. But that's kind of the issue with this slate. It's like everyone's just priced correctly. We're not getting insane value. Now, where we could be getting some very, very good value is actually going to be with the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, the reason why this isn't a smash spot potentially is because it is a matchup against the Patriots, who should be a good defense. But the reason why this could be a smash spot is because Jamar Chase could potentially sit out in week one. If he sits out in week one, then we're looking at T. Higgins to be just a little bit too cheap. And if that happens, even in this matchup, I do think we should be looking at him. But if that happens, we have Andre Yoshivas at such a cheap price tag that he is someone that would almost be a play that we have to be going out of our way to make. And the nice thing about him is we can plug him in right now and feel pretty good about that price tag, pretty good about him being able to return at least 2x. I would expect 3x there. But even if we don't get the news that we want, you could probably just go ahead and swap to Jalen Polk, who was listed as a receiver number 1 on the New England Patriots depth chart. Kind of strange that they did that. Honestly, you would expect that to happen next week, but hey, they're telling us what we already knew, that he's going to be the starting receiver there, and he's honestly looked like the best receiver thus far. I was very high on Demario Douglas to start the season. I'm not willing to let go of that take, that Demario Douglas has been a great value for best ball drafts, that Demario Douglas is going to be a solid PPR option, but so is Jalen Polk. And Jalen Polk kind of looked better. And so I'd be happy to pivot to Polk if needed. Now, it's a $900 difference, don't get me wrong, but that's a good value spot for us as well. The nice thing about this slate is that we have gotten some of the kind of news that we were hoping for. CeeDee Lamb's going to be active. Tyreek Hill's going to be good to go. So when I record this video, Lamb had his contract stuff going on. Chase had his contract stuff going on. I believe with Jefferson, we weren't sure who was going to be the quarterback just yet. So obviously we got a lot more information. And so if Tyreek Hill's going to be active and good to go in this game, I'm happy to go out of my way to target him going against Jacksonville. To me, this is going to be one of the best games to target. And if we look at the 9-to-5 Sportsbook View tab here, it also agrees. This is going to be one of the highest scoring games on the slate. Miami versus Jacksonville. We want to be going out of our way to target that game. And so if we can find more plays out of that game, that's great. The issue is I haven't really been able to. Maybe Jonnu Smith at his price for tight end, but that's kind of the issue. I don't mind Trevor Lawrence if Christian Kirk is going to be healthy and active in this game. I think he is simply too cheap as well, again, if he's active. So that's the spot where I do want the news. But again, you got Cortland Sutton there, who's a fine value. Terry McLaurin there as well, who's a fine value. Definitely happy to play those guys if need be. And then defense-wise, let's just put that in there, guys. Again, I just don't really care about defense too much. Play the lowest price defense that's not going to go negative, and you'll be set up for success. And then tight end-wise, kind of the same thing, where I just like to go with the lowest price tight end that's going to be able to return 2x typically. This week is difficult. I would say the tight end pricing is probably the best. My approach to the tight end slate might just be what I like to call the shoulder shrug approach, where you're closing out your builds and you kind of just end up on a range of players at the tight end spot. I've ended up on Evan Ingram to close out a build, which is a lot of money left over, and I just shrug my shoulders and I end up being okay with it. That might be the approach for this slate. Let's go ahead and talk about some tight ends. And so what I find super interesting here is that Josh Oliver for the Minnesota Vikings is listed on the depth chart as the tight end number 1. The issue with that is we actually saw Johnny Munn kind of act as the tight end number 1 last year at times. He is the player that, if you look on some like projection sites, ESPN, Yahoo, he's actually projected for more points than him. I want clarity on the spot. I don't know if we're going to get it before Sunday, before the game starts, because Oliver could just be listed as the starter for now. But if they get into passing situation, maybe it's Johnny Munn. At the same time, 2.9 is definitely cheap if he is going to be the starter there. And so we continue on with the tight ends. I still think in terms of pricing, again, they did such a great job. Zach Ertz is probably still the best option, I would say, value-wise, because he should be able to give us a solid 6 to 10 points, really just depending on his role. This is going to be a good matchup going against Tampa Bay as well. They have been purposely not exerting too much energy out of Zach Ertz throughout the preseason and training camp. He should be in for a good spot. I will say Jonnu Smith is someone that kept popping up throughout preseason when watching it. Just a few catches here and there, and I was just like, oh, who's that? Because if you remember last year, Durham Smythe was on the field a bunch, but not doing much. Maybe Jonnu Smith is a little bit of an upgrade there. And I know some of you guys are thinking his name is Jonnu Smith. It might be, but I have watched so much film, and what stood out to me last year is they were calling him Jonnu Smith, which is just weird. Don't get mad at me. Going up a little bit in pricing, I will say, if we get news that Kirk is going to be out in this game, then I think we instantly have to turn to Evan Ingram. Even at this price tag, he would then just be too cheap, assuming that he gets a bigger role, because he should get a bigger role. The Jaguars brought in Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis, who are more down the field threats than across the middle threats, which is what Trevor Lawrence does need to make his offense go. And if Kirk's not going to be doing that, he's going to be replaced by Parker Washington, who would not be a terrible value in that situation. But I think we'd be looking at Evan Ingram to just be a nice, safe floor play for us. And then quarterback-wise, again, I still do like Anthony Richardson just as a cheap kind of pay-up option. Now, I'm not exactly sure he has the highest floor, but I kind of think he does, just with how much he is being projected to rush this season, and even in week 1 as well. We saw what he did against Houston last year. Now, he had 2 rushing touchdowns in that game in the first half, but still had 35 rushing yards in that game as well. Didn't throw for that much. Didn't need to. I don't want to be banking on rushing touchdowns, but I think that's just going to be what he is as a player. He's going to have a high floor due to his rushing ability. Trevor Lawrence is a play I'm not going to mind if we get news that Kirk is going to be active again. If he's not, I do kind of worry a little bit maybe about the ceiling that we could be getting out of him. But again, I want to be targeting that game. That's going to be an easy way to target that game. I have come around to just maybe playing Baker Mayfield and not even playing him with any receiver as well, just because he's like the cheapest of the starting quarterbacks that are going to have a great matchup going against the Washington Commanders. That defense is not expected to be that much better. I phrase it that way because we don't know. We don't know which defenses are going to be great or not. It changes every year. We can make some educated guesses, but week one will be very telling for us in that regard. And for me, there's no reason to really mess around with quarterbacks beneath that pricing, and especially in terms of making a good kind of safer build, especially for a first look build. We can make some pivots later on. So I am going to put Baker in there for now. Tight end wise, that leaves us with 8K. We don't need to have 8K left over. So let's put Evan Ingram in there. Based off of the news, I think it's probably a 50-50 if Kirk playing or not. What's nice is we can easily get to Justin Jefferson, who I'm happy to get to going against the Giants as well. Justin Jefferson, I don't really think I need to talk about it. He is the best receiver in the league, maybe second best, maybe third best. I don't think anyone would really argue that. Top five, whatever. Even with Sam Darnold as his quarterback, I don't think we're really expecting the production to fall off that much, especially in plus matchups, and this is going to be a good matchup for him. So obviously a slightly different build, but at the same time, the bones of it, the structure of it are all still the same. I love the fact that we finally had that receiver news to be able to go in on it like this. Now, typically speaking, guys, I would probably want a running back in my flex. I just think the running backs are priced better than the receivers, where I think we're going to get some good value at the receiver spot. And so I do want to set you guys up for success as well, just in case Jamar Chase does play. I do think that kind of hurts both Yoshi Vash and also Higgins as plays. I mentioned we could go Polk. If you guys think that's too risky, you don't have to, but that leaves you with 5.2 left over, which is not perfect. I would love to get a little bit higher there, but could maybe go down to Zach Ertz as your tight end or Johnny Mund, if we get that news. But then you're able to afford a better receiver. And like, this is just kind of the issue. It's like we just have so many decent prices and nothing too egregious. Now, I will say in this scenario where I actually like this build a decent amount, I think we're going to get maybe 6 targets to Polk. I think Moore is going to be a heavy target guy. And obviously Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson, feel pretty good about those two. Obviously, defensively, again, I don't like to pay up. I like to pay the lowest price defense we can play. Maybe we pay up for quarterback, stay with the Cardinals. Again, I don't think the Cardinals are going to go negative, but if you want to, you get the Las Vegas Raiders going against the Chargers. Either one of those two are going to be probably safe options to give you 5 or so fantasy points. I'd be happy to play either of those. Now, this is all fine and dandy. I like these builds. You guys are going to be set up for success here, but let's go ahead and take a peek at what the 9-to-5 lineup builder is also telling us. And so for the 9-to-5 lineup builder to work, we just need to give it 2 data points to go off of. So I'm just going to round up here for these 2 players just to see what it does. Not going to change anything settings wise. Other than that, I'm just going to run it raw, if you will. So we're generating 20 builds just to see what the top lineup, the data is telling us. Now, the way I pull in data is looking at how Vegas thinks it's going to go, as well as kind of just pulling in DVP averages, to kind of come up with DFS projections as well. So there's a lot of different things that go into it. Now, this is crazy in comparison to how I see this slate. We're getting a lot of Tampa Bay. This is fascinating. So Baker Mayfield, Kamara, which I'm fine with, Rashad White, Mitchell, who is not a terrible value. Again, I think I'd rather go with Polk, but I get it. Drake London, I'm staying away from Drake London. I know everyone's hyped about Drake London. I just need to see it first. I don't think the talent has really on the field has matched the hype. Same thing with Kyle Pitts. Like, I just haven't seen it. I get that everyone's telling me they're talented, that they profile as an extremely talented players. I just need to see it on film to the point where they're getting hyped. Like, both solid NFL players, don't get me wrong, but not to the point where they're getting hyped as much as they are. Definitely interesting here, though, with these lineups. A lot of stacks that are going into it. And again, Baker, it makes sense. Pricing wise, it makes sense. Then we're getting a little bit of Anthony Richardson as the next quarterback, then some Josh Allen. It really likes Alvin Kamara and Rashad White. Don't hate that. I mean, they should get used in the passing game a decent amount. Don't hate that. Don't love that. This is all stuff that will change throughout the week. So definitely interesting, right? Like, not too much overlap, which from what I think versus what the data think, which is definitely interesting and strange, like I would say, but that's week 1. I think that furthers my point that the pricing has been very solid for week 1 this year. And compared to years past, where we're not getting as big of edges as we had in years past. But that's kind of the fun part of it. Now, if you guys want access to that lineup builder, you can use the promo code KEEPCASHING to get 20% off your first 9-to-5 membership. Make that $10 membership and $8 membership by using that promo code. That's going to be all for this video, guys. Thank you for watching. Make sure to give a like and subscribe. We'll be coming out with a lot more DFS and props videos throughout the whole season. So yes, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.